Agnostics are open to all the possibilities. We don't pretend to know things that cannot be known. As soon as you pretend to know something that cannot be known, all you're doing is closing your mind off to what's possible. Agnostics, we have a strong imagination. We continue to use our imagination. And we think it's crazy that someone could just pretend to know that there's a God and pretend to know that there's not a God. How do you know? How do you know? Gods are theoretical. And anyone who claims to know that gods exist or don't exist, those people need to learn how to keep their imaginations open. They need to learn how to stay open to all the possibilities. Because it's possible. It is possible that God exists. As agnostics, we acknowledge that it's possible. We don't understand those atheists who claim to know for sure that God doesn't exist. We don't get that. It doesn't make sense to us. To us, that's arrogant. And we don't understand those theists who claim to know that God does exist. That's arrogant to us. We don't get that. We live in the realm of possibilities. Yeah, maybe God exists, maybe he doesn't, or she, or they. To us, God is theoretical. So because God is theoretical to us, we're free to just consider every possibility of how God, a theoretical God, might be. We're not confined and constrained by religious books. Because all these religious holy books, they might be wrong. If there was a God, we have no way of knowing the criteria and the standards for which this theoretical God might judge us humans. So we agnostics, we just prepare for the worst case scenario. Okay? Who's to say that God is forgiving? Who's to say that there is an atonement of sins? All these religious people assume to know all these things about God. To us agnostics, that's just ridiculous. So, agnostics who follow the Agnostic Code, it's about being prepared for the worst case scenario. We're going to prepare for the worst case scenario, God. Maybe God is extremely unforgiving. Maybe God is going to judge us harshly. Maybe God has a severely strict standard by which we will be judged. Our behaviors will be judged. Because agnostics, we don't know. And that's possible. So we're just going to prepare for the possibility that maybe a God does exist. Because we want to stack the odds in our favor. And so we also want to prepare for the possibility that there is no God to save us, in which case we need to live forever physically with life extension technology. But our message, the agnostic message to both atheists and theists, is that you don't know. So stop pretending to know and just consider all the possibilities. Just prepare for the worst case scenario. Why pretend to know something that you don't? And all you atheists who claim to know for certain that there's not a God and who are living your lives that way, that there's not going to be a judgment on your life, that's not smart. That's not smart. If you were smart, you would be agnostic and you'd admit to yourself that maybe there is a God. Maybe. Just maybe. And maybe you're going to be judged. Maybe your life is going to be judged. All your deeds, all your actions, your behaviors. And this has nothing to do with believing in God. Okay, Pascal's wager was ridiculous. It's shameful. Because Pascal's wager was based on the idea that an atheist can just decide to believe in God, just to be better safe than sorry. You can't. People can't just decide to believe in God. Belief is involuntary. It's an involuntary mental process. You're either convinced of something or you're not convinced of something. So to tell someone to just believe in God is ridiculous. We can't just decide to believe in God, but we can act as though maybe a God is going to judge our actions. We can wager with our behaviors to play it safe. We can live a good life. We can be as virtuous as possible, so that in the worst case scenario that God did exist, that there'd be no question that we would pass the test of this theoretical God, that we would measure up to the standards of a theoretical God, that we would pass with flying colors. We can strive to be perfect, to play it safe. Maybe there is an opportunity for a theoretical salvation. So play it safe, atheists. Play it safe. And all you theists who pretend to know that you're saved, who pretend to know that you're going to be forgiven, that God is merciful, you don't know that. Don't pretend to know that. That's not humble. That's very arrogant to claim to know you're going to heaven. Even your own Bible says continue to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Doesn't seem like you have a lot of fear. Doesn't seem like you have a lot of trembling. Seems like you're very comfortable. That you know you're saved and you know you're going to be forgiven and all this stuff. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Be an agnostic. Follow the Agnostic Code. Prepare for the worst case scenario, God. All you people who are preparing for the best case scenario, God, it's not smart. Don't assume to know things about God. Gods are just theoretical. They may or may not exist. And that's why we need to try to live forever physically, but also try to possibly gain the approval of a theoretical God that might exist, and therefore might reward our good behaviors, our good deeds. Let's consider all the possibilities. Let's not be closed-minded. Let's not be arrogant. Eternal life is what's at stake here. Eternal life. Living forever. Eternal life. There's nothing more important than that. If you die, what's the point of your life? What's the meaning of anything if you die and stop existing? To live forever is the greatest goal. It should be your number one goal. If it's not, then you're just suicidal. You're submitting yourself to a slow suicide, accepting death. Why would you accept death? You should fear death. That's it. Follow the Agnostic Code. Be smart.